What has just been decided here in England is that, despite challenges, the law that allows children, parents to smack their children, will remain in place. So in England, if your kid is naughty, you can still give them a tap. You can't beat them, you can't injure them, you can't physically, dangerously attack them. That's against the law, of course, but a parental clip is still very much allowed. It's not allowed in Scotland, it's not allowed in Wales, it's not allowed around the rest of the United Kingdom, but it is going to be allowed to continue here in England. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Let's talk to the Associate Professor of Criminology, Sociology and Social Policy at Swansea University, Dr. Ashley Frawley. Good morning, Ashley.
Good morning.
What's your feeling about this? Because a lot of people say, oh, you know, it should be against the law to smack your kids. But a lot of parents would say, you know, if I want to discipline my kids, that's not the business of the police. That's not the business of the state. That's the business of this family, and my children, you know. So what's your feeling? Is it a good thing that in England you will continue as a parent to be allowed to give your kid a tap if they step out of line, particularly if perhaps they're putting themselves in danger, running onto dangerous roads or something like that? What's your feeling, Ashley?
I was very glad to see that the government rejected this. I've been waiting for, I've known for a while that campaigners were targeting England, and that was part of the reason why they had gone to Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland first, where the impediments are fewer, the pathway to policymaking is a bit quicker. And so they would then use that as a pressure tactic on England. And then, of course, on Canada and the United States. That's what they're trying to do here. And they've done similar things around the world, where they've gone to places where there's a sort of democratic deficit. A country gets an IMF loan, and as one of the conditions of this loan is, oh, well, we're going to rewrite your children's policy. So there's all sorts of underhanded things that they've been doing, because most people recognize that sometimes some parents may make a choice to give their child a tap or a slap on the back of the hand, on the back of the legs. Different cultures do different things. Most people recognize that that is sometimes necessary, and that that's not the place for the law, and that there's a massive difference between that and beating a child, which, of course, no one should be surprised, is already illegal. So you do a lot more harm by bringing police in and so on. And they say, oh, well, we'll just give support. But studies show when police are involved, when services are involved, they are investigating, they're looking for evidence, and parents feel like they're under attack. And then they're less likely actually to accept less heavy-handed forms of intervention after that, because they feel like their family, something really terrible and scary has happened. You know, parents get separated from their children. This is a story around the world in places where they have instituted these bans. This is what's happening in Wales and Scotland at the moment. And I'm really glad that England is standing up to this.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in an age where a clip round the ear or a smack from your mum and dad was par for the course every day in every way. I think tradition dictates that I now say never did me any harm, but it didn't, to be honest with you. My parents didn't beat me. They just occasionally, if I stepped out of line, would give me a clip round the ear. And it does concern me that the trend for governments to get involved in family business like this is on the increase. As you quite rightly say, Ashley, you know, you can't beat your kids, you can't injure them or anything like that. But it is strange that it's the age-old system that a parent, to bring their kids into the line, a quick clip round the ear, for thousands of years, that was the system. Suddenly, countries all over the world, including Scotland and Wales, are saying that's illegal, that's against the law. If you do that, you'll be arrested. If your kid goes to the police and say, my dad just smacked me, that dad will be arrested. That seems to me to be too much government intervention.
And you say, like, countries around the world are doing this, but the people of those countries are not doing this. These have never been popular bans. In fact, they've been very unpopular. In fact, there have been, in New Zealand, for instance, there was a referendum where they tried to overturn it, and the government just completely ignored the democratic will of the people. I think things like this really speak to a deep distrust on the part of people in power for the people that they govern, that they really do not trust them. Children, and then in this kind of context, children become more like angelic, more like adults. You know, we're always saying, listen to the children and so on. And adults become more childlike, which is a really dangerous reversal, because as an adult, as a parent, you need to have the confidence to set very strong boundaries. You have a responsibility to the next generation. You must socialize them into the norms and values of your culture, and you've got to have the confidence to do that. Like, I was talking to my sister the other day, and her daughter's otherwise a very well-behaved child almost broke her nose in a fight, and she was like, oh, well, you know, we went to a psychologist, and the psychologist gave us all these new methods, you know, and basically you have to make it seem like the thing you want the child to do is actually coming from them and not you. And she's going on, and I was just thinking, oh my God, you have to have a PhD in child manipulation when you are trying to parent with no authority whatsoever, with no confidence in yourself whatsoever, fearing your own child. That is no way to create a supportive environment for parents, a community of parents, when instead we're encouraged to look at each other with suspicion. And that's exactly what they did in Scotland. They said, if you have suspicion that a child has been smacked, call the police. Don't help a mother in a supermarket. No. Look at her like, ooh, something bad is going on. So now you're thinking, oh gosh, I'm being watched. Could something be said at school? Even if nothing happens, you only have to be accused of it for investigations to happen, to be separated from your children. This has happened. And so this is, I think, this stemming from this deep distrust of adults has caused all these further problems, instead of recognizing human beings have been raising children since time immemorial. For the most part, we do the best we can, and it is not helpful to bring the police and to separate parents from their children and the watchful eye of the state over something as minor as this.
It's authoritarian, isn't it?
I do think it is, yes, and I think it is speaking to this loss of a belief in the ability of people to self-govern, to make democratic choices, not just in society, but in their own families.
Indeed. I mean, on the other side of the coin, I suppose, Ashley, you could say that if you have a law, I tend to agree. Well, I do agree with you, let's be honest. I just think the mission creep on governmental power, police power, is crossing the line every day in every way in all sorts of areas, and telling parents whether or not they can clip their kids round the ear, I don't think is any of the government's business, particularly if you're talking about, you know, if a kid sort of runs onto a motorway or nearly runs onto a motorway, you know, just to say, now, listen, Johnny, you really shouldn't do that. They might not run the message home. So it could be dangerous not to be able to smack your kids now and again. But conversely, you could say that if in England, the system that we now have is you can smack your kids, but you can't beat them, you'll end up with sort of lawsuits where there'll be a big debate about what's smacking and what's beating. You see what I'm saying?
Well, that's the way that the law is right now, and you don't have that. There's a very clear line. Like, if you leave marks on a child, you have beat that child.
I see.
The law says no more than transient reddening of the skin. That's it. And the defensive reasonable chastisement has only been used like 3 times in the last 10 years. It's very clear, you know, and now you remove that, and you're saying there's no difference between smacking a child on the back of the legs or the back of the hand and beating them, that these parents are exactly the same. Some parents will make the choice to use mild forms of corporal punishment because they believe that it is the best thing. Most of the time it's used when they're very young and they can't, you know, my children, for instance, I've got a 4 and a 6-year-old, but when they were very little, me like yelling at them, don't stick a fork in the electric socket when I'm trying to take stuff out of the dishwasher and my back is turned. They think that's funny, right? And most people will use some form of corporal punishment, mild forms, and they taper it off. I mean, most people who do use it, they taper it off as the child learns reason over time. You're saying that is assault? Really? I think that is encouraging us to lose our common sense. We absolutely don't need that right now.
Yeah, well, common sense is a dying entity, as we well know.